man. Raise your family. Ha ha ha. And when I first came to the Church of Religious Science and saw a minister who was a female, whose name was also Peggy, on the platform, I went, wow, my time has come. And it didn't take me very long after that before I had become a minister.
Other than attendance and worship service, do you have a particular spiritual practice that you could share with me?
I like to do several different things. I don't just do one. I like to just simply be still and meditate. And
When you meditate, is it an empty mind or directed meditation?
I do more of an attempt to empty the mind. And I also do more of being still enough to listen. I find that I can get my best guidance by just becoming still. I also like to write, just journal, just write whatever comes to mind. I like the idea of morning pages, although that comes from the book The Artist's Way. I don't always get 3 full single-spaced college-ruled pages written, but writing also helps me a lot.
So when you're journaling, are you journaling what's happened or just free flowing?
Free flowing, whatever is up, what's on my mind. Sometimes I might be working with something, ruminating over something. Writing it out really helps to clear it up. Somehow just looking at it on paper helps me to see when I have some kind of a dilemma to get a solution. Sometimes it's about, maybe I'm teaching a class and I want to write about my insights so that can help me in teaching the class. Sometimes it assists me in giving a sermon. Sometimes I go back over some of the things I've written in my journals and find little nuggets that I can use in a sermon. So it doesn't just have a singular purpose. But those are 2 ways that I really enjoy for spiritual practice. I also like yoga, and I do yoga.
One of our viewers was either so traumatized by this faith tradition in which they were raised, or perhaps they weren't raised in any, and they have some kind of resentment or hard shell around them. And if you say to them, read this passage from the Bible or something like that, it'll be difficult for them to even listen to you. But they've heard people talking about spirituality, and it sounds inviting, it sounds attractive. Is there a non-threatening, easy to implement, beginner spiritual practice that you could recommend to someone like that?
Well, I think probably one would be to listen to music. And I'm not talking about hard rock. I'm talking about music that might have a more uplifting kind of message to it, or uplifting in the sense of there's just some beautiful classical music, but music is non-threatening, and music is a pathway to the heart. I would say starting with music would be one way.
Would you say non-lyrical? So it shouldn't be something like, oh, I love you, you're so pretty.
Right, yeah, non-lyrical. I think that is a wonderful pathway to the heart. I think there are a lot of people, writers out there right now, that are not espousing any one particular point of view, but that are very spiritual.
Do you want to mention some?
Well, I would say Wayne Dyer is one that he presents a beautiful message that crosses
Any
many different
particular
spiritual
of his
lines.
books?
I know. He has. I would think probably some of his more recent books. The writings of Deepak Chopra are another one that I would recommend.
Again, start at the end.
And start at the end. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, A New Earth. Those books are wonderful. They're a little more heady, perhaps. I would say Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements, which is, I think, a classic. Very spiritual, but also very practical. I think many people who have been deeply damaged by or wounded by some religious something are, really skittish about getting back into it again. Again, I have a story, but it's years ago. There was a young man that came to my church that was 30 years old, and he told a story that really moved me. He said as a boy growing up, he lived next door to a Baptist minister and his family. And from the time he was a kid, he was over there helping the man do his lawn and work in the yard. He didn't have a dad growing up, so he saw this man as a father figure, and he really looked up to him. And when he turned 15, he began to feel that he was different, and he began to feel different in a sexual way. And he realized that he was more interested in boys than he was in girls. And he didn't know what to do about it, and he didn't feel he could tell his mother, so he went to the man next door to get help. The little boy, he had gone to this Baptist minister's church, gone to his Sunday school, been involved all along.
Almost like he was an adoptive son.
Almost. The Baptist minister listened to him and told him that he would not speak to him anymore, that he couldn't come to church anymore. That
Only because he had these feelings.
because he had these feelings.
He hadn't acted on anything.
Hadn't acted on anything, but he had these feelings that he felt safe to share with this man, and that's what happened. He said, I haven't stepped foot in a church since until now. Now he's 30. And now he also had AIDS and was pretty advanced. He had advanced AIDS, and he was pretty sick. So he was only with us a couple of years. But at the time of his death, he was in the hospital, and there were a group of us that went to gather around his bed. There were probably a dozen of us. And one of them had written a beautiful violin solo for him. The rest of us just prayed and we sang quietly. Of course, we didn't want to disturb other people, but we were there in the hospital with him as he made his transition. And he had gone from being banished from a church to being so fully loved and accepted by his church that he was able to make that transition with peace and with a sense of healing inside himself. So that, again, it's about how do we treat others? Where were we ever taught that we have the right to judge someone? I cannot find that. I only find that God is our judge, period. I don't have the right to judge another.
It's very explicit in a number of places that God reserves that judgment to itself.
Right, absolutely. But as human beings, we don't have that right. And if we don't have that right, then our work is not to judge. Our work is to understand. Our work is to, as much as possible, accept others as they are. Not to accept all behaviors, because there are behaviors that are very destructive, but to still accept the human being as who they are. And I know that from my experience in the ministry and my experience in this teaching, love does more to heal than anything else we could ever apply. Love, I have watched love change people who have been, fresh out of prison into really human beings that are contributing to society in a positive way. I've seen love take people with terrible addictions who have been able to free themselves from them. And I believe love is truly the answer for everything.
I'm going to describe two hypothetical viewers for you. One of them is doing very well financially. They're educated, they have a very busy social life. They might be married or not, children or not. I don't think that's so crucial for this question. But they're busy, they're up to their eyeballs. They're busier than a one-armed paper hanger. The other one is someone who's not so educated, struggling financially, maybe even serially unemployed. It's all they can do to get dinner on the table each day. Neither of these people has ever done anything for anyone or anything outside of their own narrowly defined self-interest, which might include their nuclear family. Why should speak to them either together or separately? Why would either one of these people want to be of service to someone or something outside themselves?
Well, the simple answer is that you always get back more than you give. Always. I mean, that is absolutely if there's a law of the universe, it is as you give, you do receive, and frequently more than you give. As a lot more complex answer, for the one that is so blessed to have so much, for those who have more shall be asked of them, right? I'm not saying it exactly right, but for those who have.
From those to
From
whom
those
much
who-
is given,
whom much is
much
given,
will be expected.
Much will be expected. Absolutely. Thank you. That's the correct quote. And so I think that it's incumbent on those who are so blessed to have so much, it's incumbent upon them to be of service to others. It's about giving back because they have been given so much. For the one who feels as though they have so little, I know that the best way to create more is by giving. And by giving of talent and time, when one doesn't have treasure, one can also be rewarded. I can give specific examples of people because I run a group here in my church, especially over the last few years, people who have been unemployed. The ones who have been out doing volunteer work along with looking for a job have been more successful in finding a job.
And you believe that there's a correlation?
Oh, there's a definite correlation because they have stayed active, they've stayed busy, they are giving of themselves, and by being in service to others, they make connections with others that lead to people that can help them find work. You know, there are the simple things like working at a food bank. One man told me that he'd been unemployed a long time, his unemployment was running out, he went to a food bank to get food. And he said, I was standing in line, he said, and then all of a sudden I realized I was on the wrong side of the line. And I went and I asked if I could help. And he said, I just got so much out of that. I felt so much better by being on the other side. That's a great story.
Did he still take food home with him?
Yeah, he still took food home with him. But he was able to give. And he felt that made him feel more in control and in charge of his own destiny. I thought that was an incredible story. Another woman that I know wanted to find work in the field of art, in the world of art. And so she began volunteering for an art walk in Los Angeles. She then ended up to be in charge of the art walk, still as a volunteer. Then the city lost some of its funding for the art walk, and because the city lost some funding for the art walk, she found a foundation that was able to finance the art walk and also finance her. She would have never had that job if she hadn't volunteered first. There are things that you can do just simply coming to a church office. I know a lady that comes here every week and helps to fold the bulletins. She comes every week and meets with other people that help fold the bulletins. She's met other people. They've also helped her look for other work. And she's a remarkable lady. I mean, she's really one that has been like the phoenix bird in what she's done. She has walked dogs, house sat, driven people to and from the airport for a fee, cheaper than the limousines or whatever. I mean, she's been so resourceful. But a lot of the ideas that she's gotten have been from sitting around with other people volunteering. So I think it's a great thing to get to do. And I think anyone who has a whole lot of whatever they have, they need to be out there. They need to see. It wouldn't hurt them at all to take themselves and their kids to go down and feed the homeless on a Thanksgiving holiday or at Easter time or at any time and get a chance to see just how blessed they are and how much their service makes a difference.
If you knew that you could not fail, if I were able to issue you an ironclad 100% guarantee of success for your next project, what would you attempt?
Well, one of the biggest things that I've got in front of me is to get a book written. Oh, a couple of books, actually. I want to write a book called Finding Your Voice, and I want to write it to women. I want to write a book about how women can find their voice when they feel they're voiceless. And that's a big project. I would also like to be able to use my voice on a larger scale than what I have up until now. Move out of just a pulpit in a church community and move it to a broader community on a larger scale.
How do you see that? What are you visualizing when you think?
I visualize it as using the media that we have before us today. My ignorance